Smart.
Jeff Gianola, only on Coin 6 News. People you know.
Today on Face the Nation, what is the state of the nation on this Thanksgiving weekend? America survived the impeachment of a president and one of the most partisan Congresses ever this year. Will this president be remembered for anything besides scandal? And how will all this play out as the jockeying begins for the White House in the year 2000? As we always do on Thanksgiving weekend, we'll step back from the headlines and try to get a longer view from a distinguished panel of historians. Our guests, Clinton biographer David Maraniss, Harvard University professor Cornel West, University of New Orleans professor Douglas Brinkley, and Taylor Branch, who's written 2 major books on the civil rights movement. Gloria Borger is here as always as we talk about history, politics, and the presidency on Face the Nation.
Face the Nation with Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer. And now from Washington, Bob Schieffer.
Good morning again. We're all in the same studio together. Professor Douglas Brinkley is the author of a number of major books, including one on President Jimmy Carter and a recent documentary, History of the United States. Harvard University professor Cornel West is the author of the influential book Race Matters. Also with us, Washington Post reporter David Maraniss, who wrote the definitive biography, at least so far, on Bill Clinton, and who has recently completed a book on Vince Lombardi titled When Pride Still Matters. Finally, Taylor Branch, the author of 2 major works on the civil rights movement, Parting the Waters and Pillar of Fire. Gentlemen, Gloria, welcome to all of you today.
Thank you.
Well, let's step back and instead of looking for headlines, Taylor Branch, what would you say as we approach the millennium, a phrase I'm already sick of, but as we approach the millennium, what would you say the state of the country is?
I think the state of the country is surprisingly good in its objective condition. I think our political dialogue is still a little stunted, that we're coming out of the last third of the century when there's just been a lot of resentment of government and of our place in the world, and that I think this election is showing to some degree we're coming out of that the candidate, Washington and politics, national politics, are not quite as much the enemy as they have been since the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement. So really, if you look at the whole century, it's been a century of the triumph of democracy and freedom to a remarkable degree, and I think basically we're laying the groundwork to recover our optimism. That's what I think in our language.
You know, I think that's a very good point, and as you look around the world, it seems to me that the American economy is still a wonder to behold. It also strikes me that as we approach the new millennium, English is being spoken around the world, whether it's in Asia or whether it's in Europe. And yet, Cornel West, it seems to me, here at home, maybe things are not sometimes as good as we think they are.
I think there's no doubt that America is the world empire at the end of the 20th century. And there's some wonderful things about that empire in terms of its democratic ideals, in terms of its concerns with its relation to nations which themselves ought to be learning some democratic lessons. But I think our wealth inequality is still unacceptable. The quality of lives of our children, both their spiritual hunger as well as their thirst for something bigger than themselves, given our rapacious individualism and materialism, is still eating at our souls. And so I think there's some good things and there's some bad things, but I think in the best of the American tradition, we want to accent the night side as well as the best side.
Professor Brinkley?
Yes, well, I agree with what both of my colleagues here said, but I think if you take the long term look at the 20th century, I think the 1990s will go down as a great decade for economic boom. I have to think it's one of the best decades to be alive in America, simply for the fact that the Cold War is over. The United States is starting to retract its military from bases around the world. We've got numerous problems in this country, but we slowly seem to be facing them. I think that coming into the next century, the environmental crisis will be one that's going to continue to grow more and more, and also the crisis of education. And those are going to be 2 of the key issues in the next election.
David, you're the biographer of Bill Clinton. Does he deserve any credit for any of this?
Well, he certainly deserves some credit for the economy and for his optimism in the face of everything that he's gone through, much of which he brought on himself. You can say that there are many other factors that deal with the economy and that a president really doesn't have that much to do with it. But I think that to be fair to President Clinton, early on, he understood how the economy was changing and really pushed the country to adapt to that change, and that's where I would give him the credit.
Well, David, let me follow up on that. You've been out on the campaign trail with Al Gore. You've covered Bill Clinton, obviously, as well. What do people seem to be looking for in a presidential candidate in the year 2000?
Not Al Gore, unfortunately for him, too
Right.
much. I think they, two things. I think they want somebody who appears to be honest and talking to them in a real way and not just sort of with political jargon. And secondly, someone who can inspire them.
Doug Brinkley, does our last president always give us our next one? You know, after Richard Nixon, we had...
They're 10% off the everyday low price. Sale prices end December 4th. Be sure to shop your newest Buy Mart, now open